from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Coming up on AgDay, the 2019 ProFarmer Midwest Crop Tour moves deeper into corn country. Is Nebraska able to come back from not one, but 2 rounds of flooding?
But it's not a disaster.
And Indiana looks to recover after a wet spring.
We got a blast of heat, the stuff jumped out of the ground.
AgDay bringing you team coverage and breaking down the numbers starting right now.
Coverage of the 2019 ProFarmer Midwest Crop Tour is brought to you by Pioneer, our premier sponsor, with support from IBM, RCIS, RAM, AeroVironment, Titan Tires, Farmable, and Farm Credit Services of America.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths coming to you from day 3 of the 2019 ProFarmer Midwest Crop Tour. Today, the eastern leg of the tour rolls on from Bloomington, Illinois to Iowa City, Iowa. USDA reporting this week 65% of the corn in Iowa is good to excellent, while in Illinois it's just 42%. The western leg traveling today from Nebraska City, Nebraska to Spencer, Iowa. Nebraska's corn crop rated 74% good to excellent. We'll have to see how those numbers compare to what scouts are finding out in the field, but so far what scouts are seeing is a crop that's very immature and lower in yields. Now take a look at these numbers from day 1. In Ohio, where I started on Monday, our experts calling for corn to average 154.35 bushels per acre. USDA earlier this month had called for 160. The state's corn yield falling by more than 20 bushels per acre from last year's ProFarmer Tour data. Now ear counts 89.85, that's down about 10%. But it's the soybean numbers that are the shocker so far. In Ohio, averaging 764 soybean pods in a 3x3 square, USDA calling for 48 bushels per acre. Now that's down almost 400 pods from the 3-year average.
38.8% reduction, huge number, reduction number from what we saw last year. And it's a short crop, and just because it's short doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't have a lot of pods, but in this case, there were some fields that had decent pod counts, but overall, very poor performing from a pod perspective in a 3-foot by 3-foot square.
Let's look at the Western Tour results from South Dakota. Scouts calling for corn to dive to 154.08 bushels per acre. That's also down from USDA's August prediction of 157 and down more than 24 bushels per acre from last year. AgriTalk's Chip Flory spoke with ProFarmer's Jeff Wilson about what scouts did to come up with the numbers.
We found a few less ears of corn is really the main thing. Plant populations were down dramatically. The grain length was a little bit better, and the kernels around, grain length was a little bit shorter, and the kernels around were a few more. But it's all about the ear population is down more than expected, or at least more than what USDA maybe have calculated in their own formulas.
And the soybean numbers also down. ProFarmer reporting just 832.85 pods per 3x3 square, down a whopping 192 pods from last year. USDA, it's calling for 45 bushels per acre in its August report. Now keep in mind, South Dakota also has about 2.8 million acres of prevent plant this year. Tuesday, we traveled from Noblesville, Indiana to Bloomington, Illinois to give scouts a complete look at the Hoosier State and the crop potential.
Some of the yield is there, so we're measuring a lot of potential.
Scouts working from Ohio to Illinois across an Indiana crop that's had its share of issues. After a record slow start and nearly 1 million acres of prevent plant.
I think if they got it in the right time of June, you got a blast of heat, the stuff jumped out of the ground.
Given time and the further you go west, these scouts found improving stands.
It's totally different to the west than it is to the east. The crop looks okay. It looks much healthier. Both crops look much healthier. At this stop today, this is probably some of the biggest and tallest bean plants we've seen in Ohio and Indiana so far.
The health is great. They've got great stand, they've got good plant health, but they've just got a ways to go yet.
But a view without a hands-on count doesn't always tell the whole story.
These are taller beans, and these are the taller beans, the tallest beans we've seen. We have the lowest pod count on this. It's a strange, and even in here, the stand count is great, and the kernels around are only 12 to 14.
We got immature corn, we got short beans that have disappointing pod counts. You know, corn yields are kind of hit and miss, but the overall theme on corn is it just needs a lot of time to get to the finish line yet.
Is it potential or is it actual?
No, I think it's all potential, right? So today we're measuring more crops that are in dough. We haven't seen anything in dent. I don't think we're going to see anything in dent maybe until we get to Illinois. Yesterday was mostly blister.
Potential for decent crops if winter's first bite holds off.
As an analyst, if you could guarantee me the frost date this year, I could probably do the calculations and figure out what the yield is going to be. But without a strong finish, we're really measuring potential.
Now, the person that headed up that August crop production report from USDA will be on tour this week, first on the western leg. Now, tour scouts, they're leaving Nebraska City, Nebraska, headed for Iowa. But before they did that, they went and toured Nebraska, and that's where we find AgDay's Betsy Gibbon this morning. Betsy.
Clinton, Nebraska's had its share of hurdles this year with historic flooding not once but even twice in some areas, but not all hope is lost for the state. This was the spring Tim Gregerson had, farming adjacent to the Missouri River in Herman, Nebraska. Gregerson says farm ground south of Omaha has bigger problems with ground too wet to plant cover crops and prevent plant. While there is variability north of the city, he says the potential for a good crop is there.
But it's not a disaster. There are small areas that are a problem. As a whole, in this growing season, we probably have less wind and hail damage than we actually have in an average year.
That good corn is what scouts are seeing near Grand Island and Hamilton and York counties. Scouts say the samples in those counties may be some of the best in the state.
We started off at a 230 sample. The last sample we did was a 210. Our worst sample today was about the same as our best sample yesterday.
Judish takes the same route every year and says 2019 is close to last year.
We had a couple samples that were above last year, a couple below. The reason we have the below is there's a little bit of damage from the spring planting.
Like Gregerson, he says damage is minimal.
Every year we come to Nebraska, we see large areas of hail and wind damage. We've seen nothing this year. I've done 21 samples now and haven't seen 1 ounce of it yet.
When it comes to soybeans, pod counts are bountiful on the route.
26? Really?
It leaves a question if Nebraska may help pick up for other areas that are struggling following a wild planting season.
Yeah, we've had 4 pod counts. The low was 1,200, which is a pretty solid pod count. We had 2 in the 1,500s and 1 at 1,400. So that translates to good beans in Nebraska.
Reporting for AgDay, I'm Betsy Gibbon.
Well, out on tour, we've been busy taking samples, dashing out into fields, taking our instruments with us, measuring all of these samples, but there's plenty of other things to look at too, as meteorologist Cindy Clausen shows us in today's crop comments. Cindy.
That's right, Clinton. Sometimes you just have to stop and take a moment to enjoy the beauty all around you. Like in this photo taken from the tour in Indiana. Clinton says they've been dodging raindrops and counting soybean pods. Now, it's hard to believe, but these fields weren't planted until mid-June, looking pretty good. And let's take a look at our wind speed forecast for the day. We are going to see some breezier conditions, especially in the nation's midsection, as we have a front draped across the country there. Some spotty areas with some breezy conditions in the northeast and into the west as well. Overnight, things calm down for the most part, but as we head through our Thursday, what we're going to find is things picking up again in the northern plains down to the Four Corners region, a little bit over towards the northeastern United States. I'll have more international forecast coming up.
As we talk with producers out here on tour, we're not just talking about crop conditions and yield potential, we're also talking about trade, and in particular, trade with China. Vice President Mike Pence touching on the subject during a speech at the Detroit Economic Club, speaking about the White House's firm stand on China and the need to move forward with the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement.
The USMCA actually may well serve as a template for all our future trade deals, whether with the EU, the UK, Japan, or even China. But we still need Congress to approve it.
As for those talks with China, U.S. Ambassador to China Terry Branstad spoke with President Trump on Monday. While attending the Iowa State Fair, Branstad said he wasn't sure how long the trade war would go on. He acknowledged that agriculture has been really hurt by the trade war, but said, quote, "There's a lot of threats being made, but they really need quality, reliable food from America," end quote. With what we've seen on tour so far, do those numbers we got earlier in the month from USDA really matter anymore? We put that question to the experts. That's coming up. And later, a shipment that was hot to begin with could land a lot of people in hot water. We'll explain.
Ag Day, presented by the all-new Chevy Silverado, the strongest, most advanced Silverado ever.
Some important news coming out of Indiana while we've been traveling through the state. Greenfield, Indiana-based Elanco Animal Health buying Bayer AG's Vet Medicines business unit. The deal for $7.6 billion in cash and stock. Elanco makes medicines for both farm animals and pets. The sale, part of Bayer's plan to divest several of its businesses. The deal is expected to close in the middle of next year, but is also subject to approval. Well, a lack of heat and some rains across the Midwest kind of changed traders' views a bit on Tuesday. That caused things to bounce back a bit. They'll also be watching what scouts find. Let's get an update now from the floor of the CME.
Well, it's kind of hard to ignore that corn market. We keep thinking we're going to get some sort of rally, find our footings. Overnight, we had a surprise drop in good to excellent by 1%, but it was still a surprise. It was good enough for a little bit of a rally overnight, but guess what? When you can't rally on bullish news, what happens? Yeah, well, we started to sell off here again in the session. We lost our gains and actually finished up with some losses. We've got too many unpriced bushels still. Let's talk about lean hogs. We haven't really touched on them in a few days, maybe weeks. Interesting. Making a little bit of a move back here, trying to carve out a bottom is another potentially a piece of fundamental news. But in order to get these lean hog prices rallying, we're going to see better pork cutout values. That's going to be, I think, something that's going to help lead the way here too. So keep that in mind. That's good fundamental news.
Well, today we've been trailing Pete Meyer with S&P Global Platts along the 2019 Midwest ProFarmer Crop Tour. As we talk about the acreage and what's out here, that's been the big debate. Did we really plant this many acres? Is that still a story?
No, I don't think it's a story anymore. I mean, yesterday going through northwest Ohio and northeast Indiana, we lost count at 100. And, you know, people can try to make a story that maybe the acreage is overestimated, but it's one of those deals, Clinton. We're sitting at the table, and these are the cards we've been dealt. I don't think we're going to see much change in the acreage as time goes on here. So we're going to have to deal with the acreage that we have at the moment.
So the other thing that we talk a lot about is the yield number and then harvested acres. Which one do you think will play out to be the bigger deal?
Well, I personally, or I should say company-wide, our harvested acres is about 90.5%. Okay. So that's going to be lower than where the USDA is. The USDA is around, or NASS is around 91%. So that is going to play into it a little bit, I think. I'm a little bit worried that I might be on the high side. We really have to see how this crop finishes. The question is, you know, can we get down to 90%? I know I've seen some estimates as low as 89%. I don't think we get that low, but I think between 90 and 90.5% is probably a fair number, so NASS has to come down a little bit. As far as the yield is concerned, it really depends on how we finish. Yeah. And if the yield is, if the yield is out here, I mean, what we've seen so far, the yield looks okay. It's kind of what in line with everybody was thinking, but we have a long way to go before the combines roll. I mean, yeah, it's going to be a busy Thanksgiving for a lot of farmers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, appreciate your insights as always. Thanks so much, and we'll be back with more Ag Day and a check of weather coming up in just a minute.
For more information on S&P Global Platts agricultural research and analysis, call 646-478-6465. Farm Journal ProFarmer Midwest Crop Tour drone coverage brought to you by AeroVironment. Maximize every acre with the Quantix and AV DSS drone and data analytics ecosystem. Proceed with certainty.
Meteorologist Cindy Clausen joining us now. And Cindy, we're starting to see some cooler temperatures as we travel west on the tour.
That's right, Clinton. And you can see what's bringing that cooler air. We have a cold front. Now it's a slow mover, but we are going to gradually see some cooler air moving into the rest of the Corn Belt, into the eastern Corn Belt as well. But that's going to be a focus for some showers and thunderstorms as well as we get through the next 24 to 48 hours. You can see as we move through our Wednesday, we're going to see showers and thunderstorms along our front and ahead of it. We're going to see that moving into the northeastern United States as well. Some spotty showers and thunderstorms in the southeast, southwest. Also have a front coming into the Pacific Northwest. Into the overnight hours hours we go, showers and thunderstorms mainly along the front. Now, I think these may be a little bit further north than what we actually see, but we'll kind of wait and see on that. It looks like I think they're going to be a little bit closer to the front as we get into late Wednesday night and into Thursday. And you can see on Thursday, mostly dry conditions for the Great Lakes, how everything moves down into the southeast and into the mid-Atlantic states. Now, the precipitation over the past 24 hours has been mainly along this frontal boundary and also down into the southeast. You've got that lot of humidity there, heating the day, kind of heating things up. We're going to add more to that along the front as we get into the next 24 hours, and it could be heavy in spots. That's something to keep an eye on in parts of the nation's midsection. Temperatures very warm in the south central United States and even into the southwest. A lot of 90s there, and you could see the cooler 70s and 80s across the northern sections of the central part of the country. So as we get into the overnight, we'll see that cooler air continuing to spread slowly down. Now, these aren't super cool temperatures. We're still dealing with 60s and 70s there. The 50s remain up right into the upper Midwest. Heading into tomorrow, we're going to see those temperatures again a lot cooler. So far fewer 90s are expected in the southern plains tomorrow, and temperatures are more 70s showing up in much of the Corn Belt and into the nation's midsection. Let's take a quick look at that jet stream, and what we have is kind of this ridge in the west, and that's going to slowly move on off to the east. You've got this cutoff low in the northeast, so we keep some stormier conditions and the cooler conditions there. That ridge, that little bump there, is going to be moving to the east as we get towards the end of the week, and as we get into the weekend, that moves over the eastern part of the country with another trough forming there in parts of the northwestern United States. That's a look at your national forecast. Now let's check on the weather where you live. Carlin, Nevada, mostly sunny and hot for you with a high of 95 degrees. Then as we get into Colby, Kansas, scattered showers and thunderstorms, a high of 87 degrees. And Cortland, New York, showers and storms with a high of 82 degrees.
So to come, a mastermind behind a multi-million-dollar organic fraud scheme is now behind bars. And the new dairy margin protection coverage appears to be a hit with producers. We have details next.
Closed captioning is brought to you by BASF. Grow smart with BASF. We create chemistry.
A Missouri man is now behind bars after committing one of the largest organic fraud schemes in history, and he could spend up to 10 years in jail. A U.S. district judge sentenced Randy Constant of Chillicothe, Missouri, for convincing thousands of people into buying organic products that weren't actually grown organically. The judge declared Constant was the mastermind behind the multi-million-dollar scheme, and as a result, the judge said it shook public confidence in the nation's organic food industry. The organic fraud occurred between 2010 and 2017, and 5 other farmers were involved. The judge said because of the multi-state scam Constant orchestrated, people paid extra to buy products like steak, eggs, and corn-based products they thought were organic. In total, the judge found the farmers reaped more than $120 million in proceeds from the sale of grain alone, totaling 7% of all organic corn grown in the U.S. in 2016. As dairy farmers continue to deal with tight margins, more than half of all eligible farms have now signed up for dairy margin coverage. USDA says 60% of dairies eligible for DMC have already signed up. That's more than 17,000 dairy operations across the country now enrolled. States leading in sign-ups are Wisconsin by a large margin, followed by Minnesota and New York. USDA says the revamped dairy program offers farmers a payment when the difference between the all-milk price and the average feed margin falls below a certain dollar amount selected by a producer. All right, the heat is on when it comes to cracking down on illegal drugs coming across the border. See what investigators found in this hot shipment next.
Closed captioning is brought to you by BASF. Grow smart with BASF. We create chemistry.
Just when you think you've heard of the most unusual way to smuggle drugs into the country, those smugglers are turning up the heat. According to our reporting partners over at the Packer, the Customs and Border Protection Agency seized nearly 4 tons of marijuana from a truck hauling jalapenos. The 4 tons of drugs equal to $2.3 million. Federal officials found the truck on August 15th at a cargo facility in San Diego. A canine alerted officers to possible contraband, and they found 315 packages of marijuana weighing more than 7,500 pounds buried in the peppers. And that's going to do us for today's edition of Ag Day. From all of us here, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day out in farm country, and we'll see you again tomorrow from the Crop Tour.
Coverage of the 2019 ProFarmer Midwest Crop Tour is brought to you by Pioneer, our premier sponsor, with support from IBM, RCIS, RAM, AeroVironment, Titan Tires, Farmable, and Farm Credit Services of America.